Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury, it simply came down to experience. Experience made Ms. Bancroft the superior candidate. In October of 2014, the Midlands Gambling Commission announced that they were ready to accept proposals to issue a new casino license in Midlands. The Midlands Gambling Commission is a board made up of 3 members who are appointed by the governor of Midlands himself. Throughout the selection process, only 2 proposals came to the desk of the commission. One of those proposals came from Ms. Bancroft, the owner of the most popular casino in Midlands, the Black Bear Casino. The other proposal, it came from a partnership between Ms. Stark and Mr. Longstreet. Ms. Stark, she's just a local poker player in Midlands who has no business experience. And Mr. Longstreet, he is a failed business owner. On April 17th, the Midlands Gambling Commission voted to approve that new casino license to Ms. Bancroft. My client, Mr. Covington, he was one of the commissioners who voted for Ms. Bancroft's proposal. Now, the reason that we are here today is because the prosecution, they would like you to believe that Mr. Covington accepted a bribe to vote for Ms. Bancroft's proposal. But members of the jury, this is not true. Mr. Covington voted for Ms. Bancroft's proposal simply because she was the superior candidate. This is Chase Covington. Mr. Covington grew up in Midlands. He was born in Midlands. He went to college in Midlands. He serves Midlands. He works for Midlands. On April 17th, he voted for Midlands because Avery Bancroft would successfully run a casino in Midlands that would be more beneficial to Midlands than Ms. Stark and Mr. Longstreet could ever dream of. Now, members of the jury, in today's case, it's the prosecution who bears the sole burden of proof. They need to prove each and every element of their burden beyond a reasonable doubt. In this case, the prosecution's burden has 3 elements. The first is they needed to prove that Mr. Covington is a public official. We as the defense, we do not contest this element of the prosecution's burden. He is the chair of the Midlands Gambling Commission. But as for the second element of the prosecution's burden, they needed to prove that Mr. Covington received a bribe. And finally, they needed to prove that Mr. Covington had the intent to be influenced by a bribe for his vote. Now, members of the jury, the prosecution's burden of beyond a reasonable doubt, that's the highest burden in our legal system. The hardest, most challenging burden to prove. And the prosecution has failed to meet that burden in today's case. So let's take a look at the evidence. To start off, not a single witness in today's trial took this stand right here and told you that they ever saw my client, Mr. Covington, accept a bribe. Not a single witness in today's trial took that stand and said that they ever heard Mr. Covington ask for a bribe. So where did this idea of a bribe even come from? The answer is right there. That's where the idea of a bribe came from. Ms. Hyde, she came on the stand and she told us. That's why Officer Keenan met with her. Officer Keenan, he had been investigating Mr. Covington for over 2 years. And in that 2 years, to this day, he has never, ever seen Mr. Covington accept or solicit a bribe. On March 31st, Officer Keenan testified that he went to Mr. Covington's office. He asked Mr. Covington, should I let Ms. Bancroft's people know that you would be willing to accept something off the books? What did Mr. Covington do? He immediately objected to the idea. Mr. Covington is a man of ethics, members of the jury. Mr. Covington would not commit a bribe. The prosecution, they also called Mr. Covington's stepsister, Ms. Manetos, to the stand. But what did Ms. Manetos tell us? Ms. Manetos came on the stand and she testified to dollar amounts of money of cash deposits and cash withdrawals that she knew nothing about. She knew nothing about any of those money that was in that bank statement. The only person who knew about that money was Mr. Chase Covington. And Mr. Covington came on the stand and he told you where that money came from. The prosecutor, they had every opportunity to cross-examine Mr. Covington on where that money came from, but they elected not to. That was their choice. Mr. Covington told us where that money came from. Now, members of the jury, as you look at this case, you just start to realize there's no evidence. The prosecution has come to today's trial with no evidence. They brought Ms. Sikorsky to the stand. At the beginning of today's trial in opening statements, the prosecution told us that Ms. Sikorsky was, I wrote this down to make sure I got it correct, I'm sorry. The prosecution told us that Ms. Sikorsky would be able to tell us for a fact that Avery Bancroft bribed Chase Covington. Members of the jury, that was a broken promise. The only thing that Ms. Sikorsky came before the stand and told us is that Mr. Covington came into contact with the briefcase, that Ms. Bancroft came into contact with the briefcase that was found on Mr. Covington's person at the time of his arrest. That is the only thing Ms. Sikorsky came before us and told us. And Mr. Covington, he verified that story. He told you that he only came into contact with that briefcase out of a brief moment of clumsiness. Now, members of the jury, as the defense, we have also called Ms. Thomas to the stand. Ms. Thomas was the closest person to Mr. Covington and Ms. Bancroft when the prosecution's alleged bribe took place. And as a dealer at the Black Bear Casino, Mr. Thomas is trained to be able to recognize even the slightest emotions while he's dealing at the Black Bear Casino. And while he was dealing at the table on that day, he came on stand and under oath he testified that he never saw them switch briefcases at all, at any point while they were playing poker that day. But members of the jury, there's a reason why he told you that. Because it didn't happen. Now, during the prosecution's closing statements, they just came before you and they told you a lot of speculative reasons why Mr. Covington wanted to vote for Ms. Bancroft's proposal. They told you that Mr. Covington wanted to vote for Ms. Bancroft's proposal because it was going to be good for him. But members of the jury, they're not Mr. Covington. They don't know why Mr. Covington voted for Ms. Bancroft's proposal. The only person who could tell you why Mr. Covington voted for Ms. Bancroft's proposal is sitting right there. And he came on the stand and he did exactly that. Mr. Covington voted for Ms. Bancroft's proposal because she was the superior candidate. Now, members of the jury, it's obvious that the prosecution has not met their burden of beyond a reasonable doubt. No one in this trial has seen Mr. Covington accept the bribe. No one in this trial has ever heard Mr. Covington ask for a bribe. And that is why the law demands that you find my client, Mr. Covington, not guilty. Thank you.